Hello and welcome to the Man Within podcast. I'm your host, Cameron, and yes, I am bald. I finally did it. Honestly, I think it looks great. Look at that. You can see the light shining off the scalp. I'm a natural at this. It's smooth. It's beautiful. Just the way I like it. So let me know what you guys think. On the last episode, we kicked off the first of 6 installments explaining reasons you're not good enough. The first reason was that your negative beliefs, why you think you're not good enough, originate externally, but they're perpetuated and cemented internally. Meaning someone or something else told you you couldn't do something or made you feel like you weren't enough. But you can always take control of your mind and you can change that and stop perpetuating that false negative belief that someone or something else placed onto you. So for more information on that, go check out my first episode. Let's go ahead and get rolling into the next episode. And today we're going to jump right into the second of 6 installments as to why you might not believe that you're good enough. And that reason is you've lost. You've lost something significant. You lost someone or something that you really cared about. You put all of your heart and soul into this thing. You put all of your effort into it, and you've still lost. It might have been a relationship, a friendship, a job, or something that you trained really hard for, and you put everything into it, and you've still lost. And because you put everything into it and you lost, it just makes you feel like you're not good enough. Like there's nothing you could have done differently. There's nothing that you could possibly do. Your life as you knew it has been turned upside down. It's been flipped 180. You're confused because your life has just shattered. But now you don't know where to go because you've already tried giving 100% of effort into something and you lost. So in your mind, what's the point of trying something new if you know you're not good enough? That is not true. You are good enough. In fact, you're more than good enough, and you are the exact right person to fulfill that purpose that each of us have. We're also going to work through a few methods as to how to destroy that false negative belief that you're not good enough, because losing is a fact of life. And it's going to happen whether or not we like it, whether or not it's our fault, and whether or not we think it's fair. It's just a fact of life. It's always going to happen to every one of us. We're always going to lose at some point. So we need to be strong in our mind and our body and our spirit. And we need to know what lessons we can learn from those losses so that we can use them to our advantage to help us grow in the future. So today I've got time to share 2 lessons and losses that you can use to your advantage the next time you're facing a loss. This is based off of feelings and experiences that I've had in my own life, and I'm sure that you can apply it to your life as well. So lesson number 1 is failure is success in progress. One of the first things that come to mind when bringing up the topic of loss is the idea that you're a failure. Your relationship failed, you lost your job, you lost your house, you lost everything. Everything in your life was shattered and turned upside down, and all of this loss has got you feeling like you're a failure. And because you think you're a failure, you don't think there's any use of you even trying. Why should you even try if you know right off the bat that you're going to fail? Why don't you just quit? And I just want you to understand right now that failure and quitting are not the same thing. Failure required a little effort. Failure required you having the courage to put yourself out there, take risk, make yourself vulnerable, and try something to the point where it didn't work out and you failed. Quitting is failing before you even start. You can't fail on a set at the gym if you don't even try. You can't fail if you only give half the effort. If you only give half the effort, you've quit before you even saw what you were capable of. But think about what it took to get to that place of failure. Think about the person you had to become. You had to work up the nerve to ask that girl out before you started dating. You had to prepare for that job interview. You had to train for that race. And even though you lost, you still gave everything you had, and you've grown from that experience. And you may have lost a battle, but think about it. You had to be brave enough to get in the battle and fight in the first place. And you may have lost the battle, but you have not lost the war. This is not where your story ends. Failure in one thing is the beginning of a new thing. And that's how you grow. Let's put this into a different perspective. Right now, you might feel like a failure because you tried and you lost and you failed. You put everything you had into it, and maybe it still wasn't enough. But think about it this way. In the beginning, before you tried, you were good enough. And now you've tried and failed. And because you tried and failed, you've grown. So if that person in the beginning was good enough just to try, and now they've grown, so what does that mean about the person you are now? Now you're a better version of yourself because you've grown. You were willing to try and fail. And anyone who's willing to try and fail is more than good enough for me. Now, even though there's a lot to be learned from failure, we as humans tend to focus on the negatives. Even though 100 things went right, we think about the one thing that went wrong. And we think about failure as just being failure, but it's so much more than that. Even if 100 things went right, we think about we could have trained harder, we could have loved that person more, we could have studied more, we could have prepared in some different way. 1,000 different things could have gone differently, but we didn't because we didn't know what we know now. So we needed to go through that and we needed to fail to learn. Of course you lost. You didn't have the right ammo. You didn't have the right tools. You needed to go through that and fail and learn. You can't expect to be amazing the first time you try something. And if you are, it's probably not that challenging and it's probably not very rewarding. What we need to understand is sometimes our present losses are preparing us for future gains that are better than anything we could have ever imagined. Most of us, if we're being honest with ourselves, will admit life does get better over time. And 100% of people who are willing to try and fail will tell you it does get a lot better. And all of those failures contributed. I know right now it probably seems hard or even impossible to take anything good from this failure, especially if you've lost a lot. It might not seem fair right now, and it might not seem like it was your fault, and maybe it really wasn't your fault. But here's the thing. You have to make it your fault. You have to take responsibility because once you can do that, you can take control of the situation. And the reality is that life isn't fair. It's never going to be fair. It's going to kick you while you're down. It's absolutely ridiculous to think that everything in your life should be fair to you, that every part of life is going to treat you perfectly. So don't be surprised when something doesn't go your way. The world's not going to stop moving because you're in pain right now. Your life isn't going to stop because you're uncomfortable. And if you are in pain right now, think about it this way. There's two types of pain. There's the pain of moving your own direction and growing, and the pain of trying to stay stagnant and trying to stay still and letting life move you. Do you really want to wait until life forces you to move, or do you want to make that decision on your own? It all comes down to finding the meaning behind your pain and your loss and your failure and putting things into a different perspective. Who were you when you started, and who are you now? How have you learned and grown? It comes down to having the will to fight, the will to keep trying until you fail, and not allowing yourself to quit a second before then. A man's character is determined by what he does in his darkest and weakest moments. So what are you going to do? Will you quit or fail? The next lesson I want to talk about is something called the illusion of control. For too long, you've been operating under this belief, this illusion, that you have a lot more control over things in the world and life and people than you really do. Whether it's the weather or someone else's opinions of you, or whether or not you get laid off, or your sickness or your health, or 1,000 other things. You think that you have control, and because you think you have all this control, that puts a lot of pressure on you. It should be very relieving to know that all these external things you don't really have control of. You don't have control of someone else's opinions. You don't have control of someone else's actions. You don't have control of sickness. You do have a lot of control over your health, but you can't control the traffic or the weather or unforeseen circumstances. And the fact that you don't have to sit there and think about those things and operate under this illusion that you have all this control under your umbrella, it should be very relieving to you. The world and nature by itself has a lot of control, and it is always moving. And when things always move, there's constant change. And in that change, there's going to be friction, there's going to be struggle, there's going to be pain. That is one thing you can predict without a shadow of a doubt, is that the world does not stop moving. And because it doesn't stop moving, it's going to cause friction and pain. But knowing that the world and life and nature does not stop moving and changing and evolving, and knowing that you don't have to control all of the elements that come along with it, letting go of all of that control, accepting it, appreciating it, learning and growing from this change, whether it comes in the form of pain or pleasant surprise, letting go of control and accepting and appreciating life for just exactly what it is and grasping all the joy out of it, that is the key to peace and happiness. So getting back to this idea of the illusion of control, when it comes to loss, you can't lose something that you don't control. You don't control the person you're with. You don't control the weather. You don't control whether or not your job downsizes. You don't control nature or disease. Let's think about some of those things that you just lost. You thought you were in control of that relationship, but they decided to leave. You thought you were in control of that job, but the company decided to downsize. You thought you had control of the race, but you ended up coming in last place. You thought you had control of how things are going to turn out, but your loved one got sick and you suffered a serious loss. The pattern here is that if you can exercise free will, so can the rest of the world and all the people in it. So don't cling so tightly to something you can't control. That's like putting all of your money into one very risky stock. You can watch it and love it and support it all you want, but at the end of the day, the market's going to dictate whether that stock does good or bad. But before you invest everything you have into that one stock, come prepared. Do the work beforehand. Understand that stock. Understand the basics. Then move on to the next lesson. How much are you willing to risk? Is this the right investment for me? Does it align with my goals? What happens if I win and what happens if I lose? The thing is, you're going to lose a few times. You might actually lose a lot of times, and the people who spend the most time losing and learning from that are the ones who end up on top. So when you lose, learn, grow, change, become the new person. Be willing to change and let go of control. The only thing you really have control of is yourself and your mind and your actions. You don't have to put the entire burden of pressure on yourself. You should take full responsibility of your actions, and you should understand how your actions affect others in the world around you. But at the end of the day, you control what you can control. You can control your mind. You can control your actions from here on out. This is all part of the process. Like I said in the last lesson, going in, you might not have had the right tools. And looking back now, would you act the same way? If the answer to that question is no, then you've grown and you've done the right thing. So take from these losses to learn and grow and change and to become the person you must become in order to achieve the goals that you set out to achieve. Become the person who enjoys losses, who doesn't operate under the illusion of control of everything, and become the person who masters the art of self-control. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Man Within podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe. And if you are looking for a free one-on-one coaching session to get started on your goals, don't forget to comment or DM me, change, the word change, and I'll get that set up for us and we'll get you closer to your goals. So thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.